Good morning, everyone. I am here today to talk about the Ministry of Tourism and Transport's research this past summer on the influence and impact of the cruise ship industry on local transportation and visitor spending in Bermuda. By way of background, the Ministry of Tourism and Transport, in consultation with the Bermuda Tourism Authority, is finalizing a cruise ship strategy that will provide a framework for Bermuda's strategy for visiting cruise ships for the next 10 years. At the same time, the Ministry has developed a 10-year transportation infrastructure plan, and once this is incorporated into the updated transportation management plan for Bermuda, it will support many of the initiatives outlined in the Transport Green Paper, which was published May of this year. As these two strategies were under development, Hamilton retailers, some of whom are represented here today, brought forward additional concerns regarding cruise ship visits to Bermuda. Their concerns centered on the allegation that cruise lines unfairly influence passenger spending when the vessel is in port through foreign third-party promotional companies. These companies, who facilitate onboard port and shopping lectures, are alleged to favor only shops that advertise in their port shopping guide to the detriment of other Bermudian retailers. So today, I would like to share with you some of the details surrounding the Ministry's two secret shopping cruises, which are undertaken in July and August of this year on two of Bermuda's contract cruise ships, and to expand on what was ultimately learned from these experiences. This year, Bermuda was projected to receive the largest number of cruise ship calls and cruise ship passengers in our history of being associated with the cruise ship industry. We were forecasting 194 ship calls and 545,000 passengers in 2019, compared to 130 calls and 356,000 passengers in 2014. This represents an increase of 49% in the number of cruise ship calls and a 53% increase in the number of cruise ship passengers visiting Bermuda over the past 5 years. With that positive level of forecast, we would expect related business sectors to be experiencing some reasonably strong growth. And indeed, some are and still do. In researching concerns related to cruise ships visitation, the Ministry focused on the issues identified in the Transport Green Paper relating to the lack of frictionless transportation services. In addition, we focused on other issues brought to our attention this year by the public and visitors regarding long queues for public transportation and attractions, and what is said aboard cruise ships about Bermuda in the port and the shopping lectures. It became apparent to us very quickly that we would need to experience Bermuda as a cruise ship visitor in order to properly separate fact from fiction. Prior to embarking on what is now known as the secret shopping trips, the Ministry of Tourism and Transport consulted with the Department of Consumer Affairs and were advised that there were 7 potential offenses relating to unfair business practices under the Consumer Protection Act 1999 that should be considered when conducting our due diligence. The Ministry's technical officer is Stacy Adams. Stacy is responsible for transport planning, and she spearheaded the Transport Green Paper initiative together with this summer's fact-finding missions. Stacy conducted the first secret shopping trip. For levity, I'll use the same description which has been adopted in the popular press on board the Norwegian Escape in July. On her return, she conveyed her concerns to the Ministry's Permanent Secretary about the following: the ship using non-Bermuda photos to depict our island, incorrect information given in the port lecture, disparaging remarks made in the shopping lecture regarding transportation options and the high cost of taxis, the great emphasis given to sending passengers to just a few shops and restaurants featured on the port shopping map to wholesale exclusion of numerous other fine establishments who did not advertise, witnessing firsthand some of the potential offenses listed in the Consumer Protection Act. So, as a result of the Permanent Secretary and the technical officers, who recommended that I witness these issues firsthand so that I had a much greater understanding and a solid foundation from which to comment and implement an action plan. The technical officer and I conducted the second secret shopping trip for 5 days on board the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line's Anthem of the Seas in August. I saw firsthand what it is like to be a cruise ship passenger traveling to and from Bermuda, and more importantly, what it was like to be a visitor in my own backyard. Had I not been on board the Anthem of the Seas and witnessed for myself the impact that 8,000 cruise passengers have when 2 cruise ships are docked at the same time, and then expand this to consider the further impact of 11,500 passengers arriving on an even bigger vessel, I would not have had the first-hand knowledge to make a key decision, and that was to say no to the larger Oasis ships. The Royal Caribbean International proposed to bring to Bermuda this ship starting in 2021. Bermuda is simply not ready yet for the magnitude of demands on our port, transport, and our product infrastructure. I witnessed for myself what it was actually being said about Bermuda on the voyage to the island and took note of the unrelated photographs being used to promote Bermuda. I observed the contrast between a seeming lack of enthusiasm for Bermuda during the port lecture, but at the same time, the exaggerated enthusiasm for various promoted establishments during the shopping lecture. I assessed the onboard shopping opportunities before arriving in Bermuda, and for example, you can buy 2 Bermuda t-shirts for only $20 before you get to Bermuda. And with this critical eye, I reviewed the onboard information including maps, flyers, shore excursion offerings, port and shopping lectures, magazines, videos, TV advertising, directions and options for transportation, as well as where and how to buy tokens and passes for public transportation. Quite frankly, I was shocked at what I heard in the port and the shopping lectures. One thing that stood out was the push for passengers to bring their receipts for purchases made on island at the ship's recommended stores back to the ship in order to get an additional 30-day ship's guarantee. This guarantee was not available for merchandise bought at any other establishment on the basis that they could not guarantee the quality of products if they were not purchased at the recommended stores. These port and shopping lectures are recorded and shown on the ship's TV network 24 hours per day. We found that stores recommended in this manner certainly influence the shopping habits of passengers, while also witnessing the detrimental effect that it had on local businesses who did not advertise in their program. The reasons for not advertising can vary, but as we understand it, it is largely because it is very expensive to advertise and track and pay commissions. Whilst undercover in Bermuda, we stood for 40 minutes to get public transportation tokens. In fact, I was so impatient that I had left after 20 minutes, leaving my technical officer in line for the remaining 20 minutes to get tickets that we needed. We took public service vehicles to major attractions and to beaches, and from our own pockets, understand the cost of what a visitor pays to see the experiences while here. We rode on public buses with standing room only. We experienced first-hand resident frustrations of not being able to get on a bus in Somerset and or Southampton because it was full or had standing room only. We rode ferries, we took taxis, and yes, we even relied on a gypsy cab to get us back to St. George's Ferry Dock on time for Tobacco Bay. Seeing Bermuda without the ease and comfort of my own car was a challenge for sure. As the minister responsible for transport, I know what our product challenges and capabilities are. However, it is a very different experience when you take a public bus or a taxi and the driver believes you are a visitor and not the Minister of Tourism and Transport. We were asked at Horseshoe Bay, for example, if we had sand on our shoes or if we were wet, meaning that if we did, the driver would not have taken us in his taxi. On the public bus, I was the first to offer my seat to a resident and stood patiently while other residents openly complain that they have too many tourists and not enough buses to get them to work. I felt embarrassed for our visitors riding the bus, but at the same time, I saw an urgent need to increase the bus service capacity to provide a more comfortable experience for our residents who rely on public transportation. At Crystal Caves, we were told there would be a 2-hour wait to see the caves, so we had to give that a pass. We observed many bus drivers openly making it difficult for passengers to pay the exact cash fare price of $17, as the driver did not appear to have change for a $10, $20, or $50 bill, leaving visitors little option but to pay more for the service. Some taxi drivers and minibus drivers were aggressive with one another while applying for hire. Now, I am sure that many of you have read articles in the press about the secret shopper cruise, all of which focus solely on the cost and deliberately avoided any comment on the purpose of the initiative. If I had not been on the ship and witnessed firsthand what port lecturers and shopping guides say about Bermuda and how they promote Bermuda to push passengers to recommended stores, we would not have been able to identify key areas of concern and address the misinformation given in these lectures by the cruise lines. We now have a much better understanding of how local businesses are impacted by the lack of passenger foot traffic, especially in Hamilton, this despite the significant increase in cruise visitors. One thing I can tell you, contrary to what may have been thought, cruising to Bermuda is not cheap, especially if you book a solo cabin like I did. After further due diligence this fall, my ministry learned that many retail shops affected by the downturn in the world's economy, or who do not specifically advertise in the cruise lines' port shopping guide, generally feel the loss of the cruise ship business that they once enjoyed. Many shops have closed, or closed a satellite store location, or downsizing their business, particularly in Hamilton. We understand from the chair of the retail division of the Chamber of Commerce here today, Mr. Summers Cooper, that over 200 Bermudian jobs have been lost in the retail sector in the last 2 years as a result of enforced redundancies or early retirements. This is significant. I can confirm that the ministry immediately addressed our findings with both our contract cruise line partners in early October. We shared with them 3 specific areas of concern in relation to Consumer Protection Act that we observed while on board the Anthem of the Seas, and which were also observed by my technical officer on board the Norwegian Escape. The lectures about Bermuda took place at sea, and we recognize that our viewpoint is subjective, but the areas of concern about Bermuda's retail industry are as follows: a representation that the goods are of good standard, quality, grade, style, or model if they are not. A representation that a specific price advantage exists, it does not. Subjecting the consumer to undue pressure to enter into transactions. Our cruise partners were alarmed by our findings and apologized, and have since taken positive steps to eradicate these practices. The cruise lines have now met face-to-face with their third-party promotional partners who provide the Sailing at Sea personnel and on-board destination port lecturers and shopping guides on each ship. The ministry will be meeting with both RCCL and NCL in Bermuda this December for an update on the initiatives which they have implemented to eradicate these practices and what they are doing to promote more inclusive strategies. In addition, the destination photos and videos are being switched out with new vibrant photos and videos of Bermuda. As the minister responsible for tourism and transport, it is my job to assess the state of the industry. I am pleased to have been out and about to see Bermuda through the eyes of a visitor. The stakeholders who did recognize me when I was out and about in Bermuda were positive in their comments and were happy to see me in the thick of things, observing and experiencing firsthand what things are actually like on the ground. Since the news article, I have had many people come up to me and say, "Good job. That's what we expect you to do." And even people I don't even know have written positive comments. So thank you all very much. As an overview, I feel we're at a tipping point for success. I found Hamilton and St. George's to be quiet with little dynamic activity compared with compare with what is available to passengers while on board the ship. I understand why we need more public buses and bus stop benches, as well as the digital fare media system to stop long queues for tokens and passes at our visitor service centers. It is very obvious to me that we need taxi reform and better training for our frontline public service vehicle drivers, in addition to more parking spaces at Horseshoe Beach, and the list goes on and on. In closing, the Ministry of Tourism and Transport continues to receive and welcome feedback on the Transportation Green Paper. It has helped guide additional research, as outlined here today, on transportation and the visitor experience through the eyes of our visitors. We are using the information gained to help shape our future transportation infrastructure and cruise ship strategies. I very much look forward to discussing these topics and more with you in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will now take questions from the media.
Good morning, Minister.
Morning.
Panelists. A couple of things I just wanted to clarify there. Back in September, when you said in the House of Assembly, you were describing the hanky-panky quote in the cruise ship industry. This is what you're referring to, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Just so I'm clear, so there was the cruise you went on, the fact-finding cruise in August, and your technical officer went on one previously in July, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they were on a Royal Caribbean boat or vessel, and the other line? Norwegian. The concerns you mentioned, were they witnessed on both of those cruises?
Yes, they were.
Okay. So is it your understanding then that these kind of marketing and selling tactics on board are kind of standard operating procedure for all cruise operators that come into Bermuda?
Well, I don't know about all,
Okay.
because I haven't been on any others yet.
Sure.
But if you'd like me to, I'll go. As I said before, cruising is not necessarily my
Sure.
certainly not on my favorite list of things to do. Mind you, I will say this. My previous only cruise was about 20 years ago. And I will say that I did find that there's enough on the ship that can keep one busy and occupied and excited. So, maybe I might do another one or two.
And just so I understand, what was it? Were there three things that you noticed on board that were problematic to you? You listed three things.
No,
was
three
it?
things that I think the chamber and retailers said that they noticed. But there are many things. Well, as outlined in my remarks, there were many things that I found that needed help,
Mm-hmm.
needed serious help with. I mean, we had one particular lecture with someone talking about Bermuda who couldn't barely speak English. And to me, and I could barely understand what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and it's been suggested to the cruise lines, and they have taken us up on it,
Mm-hmm.
that I certainly suggested that they get a Bermudian to talk about Bermuda. Who best to talk about Bermuda than a Bermudian?
Sure.
We were looking at slides of Bermuda, and there were pictures of other countries. I mean, to me, it makes no sense.
Sure, absolutely.
And the good thing is about this is that we've talked, as I said in my remarks, we've talked to both cruise lines, and they have already started their work in fixing some of the things that we feel are wrong.
And just so I'm clear, I guess the knock-on effect of some of these concerns you've highlighted is a loss of Bermuda jobs and a loss of Bermuda business. Would that be fair to say?
Sure.
Yeah.
If you have a cruise line that if you have 4,000 or 5,000 passengers on, and all you're doing is saying, listen, I want you go to the Royal Gazette and buy a paper. I don't want you to go to Bermuda. I don't want you to go to Bermuda Sun. I don't want you to go here, right? You know.
Sure.
And then you leave everybody else by the wayside, and we feel that's a little unfair.
Yep.
And we've stressed that to them.
And so those two cruise lines, then what have they committed specifically to doing?
Several things. They, as I said in my remarks, they're gonna update the photos and videos of Bermuda. We certainly have enough. The Bermuda Tourism Authority have miles and miles of beautiful things to say and show about Bermuda. The port lecturers, we'd like somebody that can speak proper English, someone that can explain it. We'd like our Bermudian retailers to have a little bit more emphasis put on them, because they are hiring our Bermudian people, and if they lose business, they have to downsize, they have to make folks redundant, or maybe shut down shops, or some of the outlets that they have. We can't have that.
What possible remedies do you have, or tools at your disposal if these kind of practices that you're hoping to remedy continue on the part of these cruise lines?
Actually, I don't think that's going to be something we have to consider, because they are willing.
Yep.
They started immediately.
Okay.
And so much so that both of them have agreed to come to Bermuda and give us updates as to some of the changes they're going to make. So that's not even a consideration.
Sure. And bottom line, what are these changes going to mean for the average Bermudian?
Well, hopefully what it's going to mean is that tourists will get out and about to different shops rather than sort of emphasize on one particular shop. They'll get out to the different shops. One thing is, we all know in this room that we have a transportation and infrastructure issue, yep. Which in the coming months we hope to have some very good news in that regard. So we need to make sure that people can move around as frictionlessly as possible.
They'll be getting the bigger, better Bermuda experience, so to speak. Yes,
they will.
Thank you, Minister. Appreciate that.
Morning, Minister.
Morning.
Is the third-party provider on the ship that was given the bad information, do we know if it was the same company on both ships?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Two separate companies.
When you speak to the transportation issues that you experienced once you landed on the island, once you arrived on the island, what sort of ideas are you looking at? I know you just mentioned that you hope to have some good news coming soon, without getting too in depth.
Right.
Which areas really stood out to you as needed immediate addressing?
Well, right off the bat, Dennis, when I got off the ship, and by the way, I when I say I went undercover, I was standing next to people that I'd known for 20 years, right? And it was interesting because I walked into the visitor service center at Dockyard, and one of the things I'd like to change is, first of all, I think the desk is too high because all our people are up here, and the visitors are looking up. They don't have anywhere to put the purse. Little things like that. This little older lady who had a purse in her hand, and you could tell she was struggling. But the thing is, as I said, I waited for 20 minutes. I said, well, I'm not waiting in this line anymore. And Stacy was the one that sort of stayed the other 20 minutes to get her tickets. It's too long. 40 minutes to get a bus ticket or a bus token. We have, so that's one of the things we have to change right off the bat, right? And we went over and waited for the bus. We didn't wait that long, but that was a good thing. But the thing is, obviously, we need more reliable, more often bus transportation for those that wish to take the bus. We need to, obviously, that everyone knows that we have people complaining. I get calls and emails every day about the taxi situation in the country, every day. And my goal is to say, listen, I've had meetings with taxi drivers, the taxi association, the dispatchers. I've had meetings out of the yin yang, right? Had a meeting with 300-400 taxi drivers at Workmen's Club. I mean, so I've been trying to get all the feedback, and changes will come. Changes will come in that regard. We cannot have our visitors coming to Bermuda and waiting 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes for a taxi, or not being able to get any transportation whatsoever. Can't happen.
You spoke to the concern about the Oasis size ships, and that Bermuda's not quite ready for that yet. Would it be in your thoughts that at some point we will be?
I would like to say yes, Dennis, because I wouldn't like to turn any tourist away from Bermuda. One thing that I am going to put a lot of emphasis on in the coming months is going to be our air visitors, because air visitors are most important. I'm not saying that the cruise passengers are not, but air passengers, air visitors are very, very important. So therefore we need lift, and in order to get the lift, then we need the hotel beds. We know that St. Regis is opening, and we have Azora that are opening. You have Bermudiana that's under construction. So you know, it's a chicken and egg thing, but we'll get there. We'll get there.